When you manage procurement for multiple facilities, every order matters. But when it's for a hospital system, they matter even more. Grainger gets it and knows there's no time for managing multiple suppliers and no room for shipping delays. That's why Grainger offers millions of products in fast, dependable delivery, so you can keep your facility stocked, safe, and running smoothly. Call 1-800-GRAINGER, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done. This is the story of the one. As a procurement manager for a hospital system, she keeps every facility in her network stocked and ready. That's why she counts on Grainger to be her single source for thousands of products, from disinfectants to lighting, air filters, and more. And with fast, dependable delivery, Grainger helps her keep every facility stocked, safe, and running smoothly. Call 1-800-GRAINGER, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for listening. Thank you for downloading. And thank you for subscribing to the latest edition of the 12 Kyle podcast. I'm 12 Kyle. Check this out. On this podcast, what we're going to do is go back. We're going back to November 5th, 1996. On that day, Tupac Shakur would release the last album that he recorded before he was tragically murdered. He released it under the name Machiavelli, and the album is called The Don Killuminati, The 7-Day Theory. This album is actually turning 25 years old. And we're going to break it down. We're going to break down the tracks, the production. We'll talk about the controversy surrounding the album, talk about the album cover, and unfortunately, we'll talk about Tupac's death. And of course, I will not be doing this podcast alone. I've got my homie, Q, the sixth man, is in the building. So you don't want to miss it. So sit tight. After the break, what you will hear: the Don Killuminati, the 7-Day Theory, 25 years later from Machiavelli, aka Tupac, right here on the 12 Kyle podcast. Let's get it. And just like that, we are back. Ladies and gentlemen, thanks again for checking out this edition of the 12 Kyle podcast. I'm your boy 12 Kyle. And as you can see, we are taking it back. We are going back to 1996, October, to be exact. We're going back to 1996 to celebrate, and we're going to reevaluate and break down. Not October. I don't know why I said October. I meant to say November 5th of 1996. On that day, Tupac Shakur, aka Machiavelli, released his album, The Don Killuminati Theory, The 7-Day Theory. This album is turning 25, and we're here to celebrate it. A lot of things around this album. We're going to get into the tracks and talk about everything. And I got a special co-host, man. Let me tell y'all a little bit about this guy right here. He and I actually discussed doing this podcast. Jesus. I think before I actually had this podcast. I think it was when I had the radio show. We talked about doing this one. And you know what's weird was that I keep a file, right? I keep a file of podcasts or shows that I want to talk about. And in this particular file, it had Tupac podcast with Q. And I had the list of the tracks and everything that I wanted to play in the background, the format and everything. And for whatever reason, we didn't do it on the 12 radio show. And then at the beginning of this year, I started looking at the albums that I wanted to review. And then when I saw it in November that this album would be turning 25, I was like, bet. I said, I got to get Q for this one. So I'm going to bring on my boy Q, the sixth man. Me and this guy, we go back 5 or 6 years. Very, very smart brother. I mean, if you've seen him on social media, you know he's deep. You know he knows what he's talking about. Q, man, welcome to the 12 Kyle podcast, man.
Very appreciative to be here. You know what I'm saying? Always love. You know what I mean?
Oh, no doubt.
It's damn near like 8 years almost,
Oh,
bro.
has
It's
it been?
really
Man,
it's
it's crazy.
2014, really, bro. Like it's
Wow.
probably been before then, actually, because I remember we were doing podcasts about Donald Sterling,
Right.
and that had to be like 2013 or something, man. Like that's
You're
damn
right.
near
You're
nine
right.
years. So it's like
You're
we
right.
almost a decade deep, for real.
Wow, that's crazy. And you know what's funny, man? I'll let you guys in on a little secret. Before I actually got a chance to see Q, I wasn't sure if Q was a real person because this man, and it's funny, Q, because me and Ken had the same conversation.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, we were hosting Dead End Sports, and Q would come on and he would talk, and I think we were having call-ins, and you would call in, and he was so much younger than us. Like Q's 25 years old, right? And so I'm like, I was telling Ken, I was like, are you sure this is a real person? It might be somebody, it might be spam or something, man. I was like, because he's way too deep to be 25. I was like, I need to know more about this dude. And it wasn't until we did something live or something where we could actually see you. And we was like,
Mm-hmm.
oh shit, he's real.
Yeah, man, the internet be playing games sometimes. People be like, "Oh, I'm 30," and people be 60, and you know what I
Right.
mean? That's how it be. But
I was like, man, this dude is he's way too deep to be that young. I was like, if I was that deep when I was that young, I'd have a whole lot more money. But man, welcome, man. Again, glad to have you here. This guy's really like a little brother to me, man. I, I always start by when we're talking about albums, I always go back to, the background as far as like what people were doing when the album came out. And like I said, you're 25, so
mm-hmm,
you were in diapers literally when this
mm-hmm,
album came out.
mm-hmm,
So how did you get to this album, and how did you get to Tupac? Because I know that there had to be a father figure, a big brother, or somebody to introduce
mm-hmm,
you, because this album came out. I was in college
mm-hmm,
and you were literally in diapers.
and Pampers. So it's like I'm as old as this album is,
Right,
so
right, right.
I feel very connected to it for that reason. I feel as though how I get into it is
Mhm.
because my mother is very much so a music head. Like
Okay.
everything, you know what I mean? Stylistics, Delphonics, you feel me? Like Earth, Wind, and Fire, right? So we start there. But over time, with the influence of my father, cousins, and whatnot, bumping EPMD, Jizzle, Liquid Swords, all that stuff, right? You know what I'm saying? Like that's
Mhm.
the foundations of my hip hop stuff. Um, so people would think that it's like more like Soldier Boy and
Right,
Kanye,
right,
but
right.
it's like no, I got into them like later, you know what I mean? So that's how I get into Pac is I just go to the pillars of every genre. Like my mom would tell me, if you're gonna know about genres, if you're gonna know about music, you got to go to like not to use the word like the goats and whatnot. I feel like that stuff
Mhm.
is so played out now, but you got to
Right.
go to like the pillars of the genre, and you can't talk about hip hop without talking about Tupac, Biggie, Jay Z. So I
Right.
start with just the regulars, starting with Tupacalypse now, and I was like, okay, this dude is saying something. Going from that, and this is around the time when I was probably about like 12,
Okay.
10, 10, 11, 12, right?
Ooh.
And this has to be like I'm 25 now, so that's probably like 2004,
Mhm.
2005. So it's like from this point, I delved deeper into it. I actually started backwards. I actually started with Tupacalypse, and then I went to like, "Are You Still Down?" the posthumous
Okay.
album and whatnot. And I was like, "All right, I like this "Do for Love" single." You know what I mean? Blah
Right,
blah
right.
blah. But then I started to like go in order. I was like, okay, by 13, I had to go in order. I'm like, all right, Tupacalypse, then I got to go Strictly 4, and I go to Me
Mhm.
Against the World. You know what I'm saying? So then I arrive at All Eyes on Me, and I'm like, bro, this dude
Yeah.
is incredible, right? And I'm like, yo, this dude, like, not only like the politics of what he was saying, because I had seen so many interviews and I had friends in middle school who were like, you got to know about Pac. Mama was a Black Panther, all that stuff, right? So
Yeah.
I looked into his history. I'm like, okay, he's saying something for real.
Yes.
And then, All Eyes on Me, and then obviously the Machiavelli album. And I arrived there, and I've been playing it ever since. I just think it's like I think it's just we'll get deeper into my thoughts, but I've been
Right,
playing
right,
it
right.
ever since.
Yeah, man. That is a great story, because a lot of times people think that like we all arrive to music in the same way, and we don't.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's really dope when cats like you, have people in your family, like you said, your mom, your dad, who introduce that music to you, because it it was a great era. There's nothing against this era of music, but I think you'll see as we talk more about this album and Tupac specifically, they don't make them like this. When he said he was cut from a different cloth, he really was. I would be remiss if I did not, before I even go any further, shout out my boy Chris Harley. Chris Harley and I went to South Carolina State University together, and I saw Chris a couple of weeks ago at our college homecoming. And Chris, as soon as he saw me, he gave me dab, gave me a hug. He told me he loved me. He gave me a bottle of Ciroc. And after that, he proceeded to tell me how much better Tupac was than Biggie. And so, like, this is the thing that Chris and I, for the last 10, 15 years, every time we see each other, it's Pac and Big.
Mm-hmm.
And it's all in good fun. Mm-hmm. But I had to shout him out on this podcast. How I came to this album, man, obviously, for those of you know, this album came out just a couple of weeks after Tupac was murdered. I'll be honest, man, this album found me and a lot of people in a really weird space. And the reason why I say that is because, like, we didn't expect Tupac to die. Like, nobody expected him to die. And I talked about it in another podcast, and it's worth mentioning again here. Pac got shot on September 7th, right? Mm-hmm. I think, and he passed away on September 13th. And I think on September 11th or 12th, somewhere around there, the news that we got, because keep in mind, there was no internet. The news that we got was he was doing better. Mm-hmm. The only thing we had was that Tupac got shot. It was, in Vegas after the Tyson fight, so forth and so on. There was, speculation as to who did it or whatever like that. But beyond that, it was very little news that we had. It's so foreign from how it is today, where you would have had TMZ on the scene. We would have had Twitter. We would have had everything. We would have known his blood pressure. You know what I'm saying?
Oh, uh-huh. And
so, like, I remember getting the news on September 11th that he was doing fine. And it was like, yeah, they expect him to recover. And we was like, oh, snap. So Pac got shot. We were, a little disappointed and sad that he got shot. But you thought in the back of your mind, okay, well, he's going to be fine. He'll make a record about it,
Because Quad Studio.
Yeah, exactly. And so we thought that was going to be what it was. And then, like, I just remember when I got the news that he died, I was like, I couldn't believe it. I was like, no. So I went to the radio because, again, there was no internet. I went to the radio, and the radio, as soon as I went to the radio, I went to 3 different stations, and all of them were playing Tupac songs. I was like, oh my gosh. And then the guy came on and said that, Pac was dead. And so, like I said, this album found us in a really weird space because, we had just lost him. And so it gave us a little bit of life and good feeling of hearing it. But it was also sad because we were like, damn, we're not going to get this anymore. And we lost a really good dude. And I mean, like, at that particular time, by the time the album comes out a couple of weeks later, there's all kind of speculation. We, of course, heard that, the FBI was following Tupac the night that he was murdered, both he and Biggie, and that has been confirmed. But I mean, say what you want about the FBI. We already know how that goes. But it was just crazy, man. So this album found me in a really, really tough space. And even going back and listening to it, because I'll be honest, I had not listened to this album in its entirety probably in the last 3 or 4 years. But as I was listening, leading up to this podcast, Q, man, I just remember it reminded me how much I love this album. Certain songs took me back to certain memories of being certain places. Yep. It made me feel good about how I felt about Tupac at the time, because, at the time that he left us, Pac was, you couldn't be on the fence about it. You either hated him or you loved him. Like, it really wasn't no in between. I've talked about, about the East Coast, West Coast beef, if you will, and I use quotation marks in that. And I think, he and Biggie never got a chance to, square everything up. And, he obviously goes at Nas and Jay-Z on this album. And he and Nas, we found out later, got a chance to squash it before, and he actually told Eric B that, hey, remind me when we get back to LA to take this off that track, take this off that about Nas. And obviously he never made it back to LA because they left New York at the MTV Music Awards, and then they stopped in Vegas, and that was his last stop.
At Bryant Park.
Yep. They had a talk at Bryant Park. And so yeah, that's where this album found me in 1996. Again, like I said, in a different space. but I was happy. I was sad that he was gone, but I was also happy to hear his music because you mentioned the "Are You Down for Me" album, which was the first posthumous release. I think that's the last Tupac album that I bought. That's the last one. I didn't really want to go into, and I mean, there was a run of Tupac albums after that. I didn't want to buy those albums because I didn't know if those were if those were songs that he would have put out if he were still around, I guess. Um, but as we get into this album, obviously it's called the 7-Day Theory, and now it's been widely rumored and stated that this is called that because this album was completed in 7 days. Do you think that this album was done in 7 days?
I think it was Daryl Harper did an interview with one of the producers. It was the three main producers on this album: Hurt 'Em Bad, QD3, Quincy Jones' son, and then you have Daryl Harper. And I think Daryl Harper said that he recorded this album in 3 days. He recorded it in 3 days. Like, first of all, just the work ethic and the mastery of knowing what your pen needs to do and just the essence of him. I feel like it's all over this album. So I think that I believe it if they say 7 days, because Pac was the type of guy where they would tell him, put it on like a break beat, and he would just rhyme over a break beat. It would be a simple beat, and he would just write something down 20 minutes. Like, I think he did Against All Odds in like 15 minutes. He wrote this, like, it's just like, it's ridiculous. Like, you know what I mean? It's just he's touched by something, some higher, some entity. Like, to me, this album is a conjuring of so many ancestral, like, just understandings, because there's so much code on this album that we're gonna get into. It's so much coded stuff on this album that people don't really get. So much Black tradition that his mother's put into him on this album that people don't really grasp, and that is the reason why I do believe it was probably done in 7 days. Because when you have all these lessons that he wanted to give us on this body of work, I think it just spills out of you naturally,
Right. Yeah, I agree, man. I think I wasn't surprised when they said it was done in 7 days. I actually believe that, and I'll tell you why. Because Pac was really on some hustle. Like when he got out of jail, it's well known that Suge got him out of jail or whatever like that. And he owed Suge and he owed Death Row, in his words, his life. And so, but he had some albums that he was due for that particular label. So, and they said it would be nothing for him to do 3-4 songs in a day. He was recording like crazy. And I think that's why we were able to get so much music even after he left us. But his work ethic, I think the time and everything that he put into his rhymes, I could definitely see him knocking out this album in 7 days. I found it interesting that he went, and this was a big controversy at that particular time, how he went from being Tupac to Machiavelli as far as his moniker on this album and the history behind Machiavelli. What was, I guess, what did you take from that, or what was explained to you about his name transition from Tupac to Machiavelli and the significance behind it? Because of course there's some conspiracy theories that he faked his own death and he's hiding in Cuba and all this stuff like that.
Lord, and as much as I wish that's true, there's actually an interview with one of Tupac's childhood friends from Baltimore, and and obviously you got to take certain things with a grain of salt. Everybody want to say that they knew Tupac, right?
Right.
But there are pictures, there's multiple photos and videos of this person riding with him to Marin City when he moves, and in Baltimore when he was dead broke with Afeni, living in a one-room walk-up, and I think it was East Baltimore. Oh, wow. So I think that this man told us a story about how, being at the performing arts school, he was like, yo, this Machiavelli dude is dope. You know what I mean? And this is Pac around like 12, 13 years old. Right. Going back and forth from New York. And he was on top of that, I think he always had an affinity for the Machiavelli story in the book, and like the whole narrative behind that, and just the tactics of how to fake your own death or whatever. But it was also, from what I also understand in the research I've done, it was also kind of a play with him and Suge, because Suge would call himself Simon and Pac would call himself Machiavelli. And if you listen to All Eyes on Me, like Hearts of Men, he was like, I'm Mr. Machiavelli. That's what they tell me. You know what I'm saying? So he had been saying this on records So I think that people kind of not take it out of context, but people took it to the umpteenth degree of
Right.
like literally, you know what I mean? Where it's like, yo, this is not necessarily a declaration that he faked his own death. It's just more so like, I'm like almost like a moniker. It's an alias, you know?
Yeah, I think you make a great point in that because again, you look at the time.
Mm-hmm.
I remember people, diehard Tupac fans who did not want to believe that he was gone. And I mean, we understand it, because again, at that particular time in the 90s, yeah, you heard about people getting shot, but like nobody, I don't remember like celebrities, dying at an early age over something like that, so, and it was just so senseless. And it was just like, okay, the how and the why. And I wish, even looking back on it now, I wish that we did have the internet, because I think we would have gotten more answers. Like, it's funny, Q, because our middle son, Cameron, he's 19 at the time of this recording. Cameron is a huge Tupac fan, right? And Cameron will he'll ask me the most randomest question. He's like, Dad, well, if Pac got shot, how do they know that such and such didn't do it? And I'm like, well, Cameron, I don't know. I was like, he was on a Vegas Strip. I was like, the word that I got, he was on a Vegas Strip. It was a, bumper to bumper traffic. So, and nobody saw nothing. I was like, now we know somebody saw something.
Come on.
I was like, so I said, but and I'm always intrigued by the questions he asks, because like he's thoroughly interested, and he's watched these series and movies on, Pac's killing and stuff like that. And I'm like, yeah, he's I was like, I can't bring myself to watch that, because as a fan, it just hurts. Like, and you kind of relive it all over again, and the disbelief of him and Big, for that matter, being gone. But yeah, I thought that you definitely make a great point. Like you get so much from this album. We can actually start with the album cover when you talk about Machiavelli. Q, we didn't know what the album was going to look like.
Yeah,
I didn't know until I went to the store that day that it came out to buy it. What did you take on the album cover?
This image is not to disrespect any Christian, right? Anyone's religion, right?
Right.
There's a story. I think obviously we got to take with grains of salt, but the story from Suge is that one night Pac called him up at like 3-4 in the morning, and he's like, "Yo, what's good, Simon?" And he's like, "What's up, Machiavelli? What's up?" And he's just like, "Yo, I want to do this album." And also at the time, I believe that Pac wanted this to be a mixtape, which is amazing to me. That's like the foresight of like, years before No Limit, years before Wayne, years before Dipset 50. This was gonna be sold out the trunk of people's car. That's insane to me.
Right.
So he calls him up and he's like, "Yo, I want to do this joint, this Machiavelli joint, and I got this idea for the art. I feel like I'm being crucified. You know what I mean? I feel like I'm just the one who got to take this. You know what I mean?" And it's Simon at the time. You know what I mean? It's just like, all right, well, I'm gonna get it done for you. So he goes to the art department at Can-Am, at Death Row. And he's just like, "Yo, Pac want to do this." But this was like, I think it was 3 weeks before he died that they were putting this press together. So it's just like, a lot of people do believe in energy. A lot of people do believe in like self-fulfilling prophecies and whatnot. But I do think that there's some credence to the fact that Tupac understood that not only his politics, but who he was representing for with his lyrics, it gave him a short amount of time. There's a book that I'm not gonna get too in depth when I'm speaking about the album, but there's a book called The FBI War on Tupac Shakur by a researcher named John Potash.
Okay. And
this book, in full detail, court documents. Obviously, there's some speculation within the book, but the court documents, the label documents that are put forth in this that are verifiable from his family members, people like Watani Taihimba, who was his manager during the Tupacalypse time. You have people like Chokwe Lumumba, who was his lawyer during the 94 sexual assault case that they gave him severance for and ended up trying Haitian Jack for the rape instead of Tupac. You remember they put him in jail for groping her butt, right?
Yep.
So when people try to throw dirt on his name, I think people need to look into this book, because there's such a narrative and a deliberate defamation of who Tupac was. Because like you say, Kyle, when we look at the album cover, it's very easy to look at it and be like, "Oh, he full of himself. He thinking this and that." But it's just like, but when you look at his Death Row contract, they said you have a 3-album deal to get out of this deal. All Eyes on Me is a double disc.
Yep. There you
And
go.
Machiavelli's the 3rd album.
That's it.
And then he dies before the 3rd album comes out. I'm not saying anybody believe what you want to believe, but please read this book by John Patash. There is a narrative we are getting, and Kyle, let me know if I'm wrong here, but my dad, he tells me he was like, yo, he was bigger than Fresh Prince for like 8 months.
Yeah.
How does that happen?
At the time that he died, he was literally the biggest star in rap. I mean, like, and it wasn't even close. Like, even somebody like Biggie was right there with him, but there was no star that was shining as bright as Pac. And here's the thing that's interesting is, and I know we'll get to it, but in the album he disses Jay-Z. Jay-Z's album just came out, so nobody knew nothing about Reasonable Doubt. I wish I talked about it on another podcast. I wish I had time to talk about Reasonable Doubt. For as great as it is, it was not something that was hot on the streets like the first 6 months to a year that it was out. Like, the people who had it loved it. I had it, but it wasn't like Jay-Z was some household name. He came at Nas. Nas was huge. Nas was, a hip hop god at that particular time. But I mean, Pac, his level of celebrity and stardom was through the roof. I mean, he had done movies. He was on another level. And I think really, he was just really scratching the surface. And what's interesting, Q, is that like, it wasn't until probably about, I don't know, man, maybe about 10 years ago, I was having this conversation with somebody, and it dawned on me how old he was when he died. Like, I knew how old he was, but like, he wasn't that much older than me, but he seemed so much older and so much wiser. He had been through so much stuff. And he was somebody that, people won't say it, but he was somebody we looked up to. And we got a lot of game and a lot of wisdom. And Tupac was a lot of different things, man. I mean, he would be riding on fools on one song, and the next song he, talking about women, and the next song he's bigging them up, But that's just who Pac was. He was a complex person, but who he was at the core, I think we knew through his music. And I don't think that, a lot of people got a chance to really see. If you really listen to his music, I think you can get a chance to see that. But if you get beyond the bandana and all the flash and flame, all the stuff like that, you can see who Tupac was. But yeah, you make a great point, man. I'm definitely going to check that out, because it's so much stuff that is verifiable if you're just dealing with the facts and stuff that happened, even the night that he was murdered and what was going on or what was surrounding him. I don't know, man. I still, and that's the thing I think that's frustrating when you think about Pac and Big in that aspect. It's so many unanswered questions. Even, 25 years later, still unanswered questions. But yeah, this album, when I saw the album cover, man, I was blown away.
it's just like, it's an amazing cover in retrospect because of just the energy that the album holds. And you're just like, damn, they really did crucify this man. If you do believe a certain thing, or even if you don't, you can believe that he was crucified prior to. I just want to state my biases and state my opinion plainly for the people. When I read that book, it confirmed a lot of what I already thought.
Okay.
And what I think about Tupac's death is, I don't think it's a death or a murder. I think it's an assassination. And I think I use that word clearly because if you think about every living example of respectable Black manhood,
I know where you're going.
It's been extinguished at every point. It's been removed. It's been degraded. It's been defamed. Oh, don't be like him. Or, oh, we can't allow this. Malcolm X, Martin Luther King, Medgar Evers. We can go on and on and on. Matulu Shakur. It doesn't matter. You know what I mean? Even Jesse Jackson, they put, the photos out, all that stuff.
Right.
With the even like the mayor in DC, he's on crack. You can't have him doing that. You know what I mean? So It's like every time that there is an example of Black manhood that is slightly respectable, they throw something on it or they have to defame it. And this book clarifies so much for me because the stories of what everyone has said around him, from my father to my uncle, is like, yo, this dude's bigger than Fresh Prince. How does the biggest rapper in the world get killed on one of the busiest strips in America? And no one has photos, no one has a camera, no one has nothing. And in this book, they revealed that 20 minutes before he got killed, they got pulled over by the police.
Yeah.
People
Yeah.
don't even know this.
There's
You know
a
what I
photo
mean?
of that. The photo when you see of the BMW,
Mm-hmm.
Pac's on the passenger side, Sugar's on
Mm-hmm.
in the driver's seat. There's a
Mm-hmm.
photo. That's the famous. That was the last photo, and
Mm-hmm.
it's ironic. And Q, we never put kind of 2 and 2 together back then. Before that, like, wow, how would that photo be there? I mean, it's a lot of stuff that
Mm-hmm.
is that makes you question it. And I mean, like, I
Mm-hmm.
know, or it was said that Suge
Mm-hmm.
told the death row camp not to say nothing, not to talk to the police. And I
Mm-hmm.
get that part of it, but it also got into some street shit, and I never get into street shit because I ain't no street dude.
Mm-hmm.
But I'll be very interested to check that out because I still got questions. I still have a lot of questions, and as time goes on, the questions become even more and more. So we saw the album cover, and that bugged us out.
Yes.
And so then we get, before I even get into the tracks, what did you think about the production? This production, you mentioned, the people that produced this album. It doesn't sound like All Eyes on Me. This album doesn't sound like All Eyes on Me. It doesn't sound like Me Against the World sonically, but I think it really fits where he was going. Like, he didn't have to have, how can I put it, over the top production. This production, I think, fit the pocket that he was in. What did you think about the production on this album?
I always say it like this: if All Eyes on Me was the party that lasts all day and all night, this album is like the cinematic, Dirty Harry Western that ends with the shootout. You feel me? And everybody goes out in a blaze of glory. You know what I mean? But the production on this album is incredible to me because I think it gets back in that Me Against the World pocket a little bit. And obviously that was way more New York, East Coast based. But this, I really do believe that this was going to be the sound of the later 90s, 2000s had he been able to live, because I think Pac was saying in a couple of interviews I was watching with guys like Daryl Harper, Hurt 'Em Bad, and QD3, they were like, yo, fuck what they doing in, the other thing. This Whack Room, what they had in Can-Am, they had a studio room called the Whack Room, where they brought in guys who they thought didn't really have what it took to really make it on bigger albums for Snoop, Michelle, and whatnot. But Pac was like, yo, this dude, Daryl Harper, he making beats every 20 minutes. Yo, this dude Hurt 'Em Bad. Like, yo, he's giving me some of the most fire I've ever heard. And the pocket I'm in and what I want to do, and just the conversations that they were having when recording, apparently Pac was saying, yo, I want to get back more to the teachings of what my people's taught me and what I was able to put on, like Me Against the World and Tupacalypse. And I think that the production on this album is just so stellar because you have strings, you have these great guitar riffs, and it's just like, you have, there's even a Prince sample on To Live and Die in LA. You know what I mean? So it's like the haunting bells and synths that you get on this album. Even a joint like even my least favorite song, I've come to love it. Like even Just Like Daddy, I love the synth on it. I love the synth on that on that song.
I'm with you on that. That one is funny because like the first time I heard it, I was like, I don't remember that, because like I always what I try to do, Q, is when I'm reviewing these albums, I try not to look at the track listing when I listen. The first couple of times I listen just to go through memory, see if I can kind of guess what the next song is, particularly if I haven't heard the album in a while. And that came on, I was like, it's okay. I was
Come with me in a time.
I'm like, yeah, they could have used Jewels or somebody for the hook or something, but this album was absent of, the death row camp. I mean, obviously, he and Dre had fallen out or whatever the case may be, but there's no Snoop on this album. There's no Dog Pound. There's nobody. It's just, him and the Outlaws. And I really, really enjoyed, all of the aspects of this album sonically. It like you said, it took me back to, the Me Against the World. It took me back to Tupacalypse Now, Strictly for My Niggas. It did all of that. I think, and it's, like I said, it's not over the top production, but I think it what it does is it brings out the best of Tupac. So we get into the tracks. Track one, Bomb First, My Second Reply, featuring Outlaws. What'd you think about that one, man?
First of all, I have two versions of the Machiavelli album, and I listen to
Okay.
both of them actually. I have the OG version where it's just Pac in the studio, you can hear his outtakes,
Mm-hmm.
and then I have the original, and it's also on YouTube. Y'all type in on YouTube if you want to hear the original version of Machiavelli without like the skits and without like the
Okay.
dude coming in. Pac on the original version, he's like, "Yo, motherfucker, still breathing? You niggas still breathing?" And
Yeah.
you know what I mean? And it's just like, but on the original versus the retail comes in with this dope. It's so haunting to me. Where
Mm-hmm.
it's like you have these funeral bells. It sounds like they're outside of Pac's funeral or something, and it's just like the whole shook shot me stuff. We've come to figure out that was just a reel that they used from a movie of sidewalk talk and whatnot.
Right.
But just that whole mystery that lasted and still lasts for a lot of people, they still don't know this information. People talk about that all
Bruh.
the time. Yo, he said shook
They
shot him.
still
Did you hear that? Like, dude, people want Pac to be like, Jacques Cousteau or something, man. But the whole like MTV reporter, the Tupac has just released an album under the name Machiavelli and all these other
Mm-hmm.
corny sounding motherfuckers. I love that. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? All right,
Yeah.
come in with that. And then you just hear him just start riding on these folk. You know what I mean? Like
Mm-hmm.
just the energy and just the adrenaline. I think what makes Machiavelli album so special is the intro and the ending of Against All Odds.
Mm-hmm.
To me, it's like a roller coaster that stays up the entire time.
Yes. Yeah.
It's just this adrenaline shot that to me has all of the best qualities of his last three albums prior. It has the
Mm-hmm.
Strictly For You, has to keep your head up because listen to White
Yep.
Man's World, and
Yep.
we'll
White
get
Man's
there.
World.
But you know what I mean. But it's like Bomb First comes in. And I've even grown to like the Outlaws. That's how much of a Tupac fan I am. You know what I mean? No
The
disrespect to
Outlaws
Edie.
they weren't that bad. They weren't.
Yeah.
They were decent. They were decent.
You know what I mean? Like Edie had a good verse on
Yeah.
Outlaws when the land unloaded, when nobody hold, like, all right, cool. Like, all right, he was coming in kind of rhyming a little bit, you know what I mean?
Right. Yeah. This is a perfect lead off to an album. I think I just remember hearing it for the first couple of times. I was like, yo, like that. I was like, that's the Tupac that I remember. Like, I think, and I was gonna talk about this a little later, but I can admit it now. Personally, I realized after going back to this, I'm not saying that it's better, but I like this album more than I liked All Eyes on Me. Now, my favorite album is Me Against the World from Tupac.
Of course.
Maybe it was where he was and where I was. I was in college, what I was going through at the time. That album was dope for me playing football. It was something I listened to in the dorm or before I went to practice, before I played in games.
So many tears, man.
Yeah, man. I mean, like it was something that I still even bump to this day. But I like this album. Listening to it reminded me how much I liked it more than I like All Eyes on Me. I was like, it felt like that was a Death Row album, but this felt like a Tupac album. It just and I, the difference, between the Death Row and and it's not to say that one is better than the other. It felt like Tupac. Bomb First was crazy. It was crazy. When I heard it, I was just like, yo, this is the Pac that I remember. Then obviously we get to track 2, Hail Mary. Listen,
man. All right, Kyle. It's just like, Kyle. First of all, before we get there, where do you fall on the great debate of greatest opening rap lines? It was all a dream. I ain't no killer, but don't push me.
I ain't no killer, but don't push me.
That's what like that
because
shit.
Like
that's that shit.
It was all a dream. Okay. Admission. As much as I love Biggie and as much as I love Ready to Die, that album, Juicy. I've heard it enough. I'll just put it like that. Even like when I play it now, if it's on, I'll listen to it, but it's not something, because we heard Juicy every single day. It was on black radio, it was on white radio, it's on MTV, it was on BET. So I just, it's okay. It's not, and again, it's no knock, but that, to answer your question, no. Pac has it better.
I think it's the greatest opening rap line ever, man. Because when you understand what he was going through, Pac was getting death threats from the feds. He was getting death threats. His own city from LA. You know what I mean? He was a city he adopted. The coast really adopted him in a lot of ways, but there was still turmoil because at this time, Pac was actually people don't know, but Pac was actually orchestrating gang truces in
Mm-hmm.
Compton, and also why I think it's an assassination, because the two people who were also around Death Row were two heads of the Compton gang unit.
Mm.
And if you know anything about, dirty cops and how money is laundered through the hood and whatnot, you know what I mean? Do your own math. Read the book,
Yep.
John Patash. So when I hear Hail Marys, I ain't no killer, but don't push me. Seeing what he was doing with Puff and who Puff was hiring to retaliate against him in the city and whatnot, you feel the essence right from jump. And just like the way that those bells come in, like boom, Machiavellian, it's just like, it's to this day.
Yes.
There's still not a better song to me. If you trying to get in the gym, if you trying to hoop, you put that on and people just know it. And I think it's the greatest rap chorus ever. I think it's the greatest hook we've ever heard. It's just like the essence of who he is in those two verses, and you just hear him spitting like penitentiary breezes packed with promise makers, never realize the precious time. Like, come on, bro. Like,
Man,
it's just incredible. Yes.
That when I tell you that got all the play, in 1996.
Mm-hmm.
Conversely, it wasn't a song that I ever got tired of hearing. It was that was just Pac, man. He was so many things. And I think this song really, even though it was a chart topper, it was something, but there's a message in it. And I think that's where I think people kind of got lost a little bit, because not only is the song jamming, but there's a message here. And like you said, he was going through a lot. I mean, like, some people, Pac's haters will say, some of that stuff was self-imposed, but at the same time, he was dealing with a lot. He was coming off a criminal case, and Death Row was going through their things, and he was going through his quote unquote beef or whatever the case may be. He had enemies. Don't get it twisted. Now, he had a lot of people riding with him. He had a lot of people on both coasts, supporting him and his music and his movement. But he had his detractors, and he had people that didn't want to see him shine. So Hail Mary was just again a great follow-up to Bomb First. But it's one of the, and I hate using the word classic, but it's one of the most popular songs, hip hop songs, period. And it's to me, it's aged well. Then we get to track 3, Toss It Up, featuring Aaron Hall, Danny Boy, Casey, and JoJo of Jodeci. Man, what did you think about Toss It Up?
First of all, I play this album through every time. I don't skip a track.
Yeah.
But the reason why I don't skip Toss It Up is because I look at it as like almost like a parody song. You know what I mean? Where it's like, it's such a taunting, track, because I think that they took No Diggity, and Pac was supposed to actually use that beat, and then they got a cease and desist, like, yo, you can't use this at all. And I think it was just such a genius like taunt at Puffy, where like, we got all your singers, your homies on this joint singing with us on Death Row. And funny thing about that video, Pac gave Lisa Ray her first start.
Yeah. On she was Brenda's Got a Baby, right?
I think Lisa Ray was actually in the Toss It Up video. That was his last video he shot before he went to Vegas.
Wow. I thought she was in Brenda's Got a, maybe it was somebody else I thought was in Brenda's Got a Baby. But wow, that's crazy. That is crazy.
I just think Toss It Up it's definitely one of the more all eyes on me type tracks, where it's just like, it's party music. And that's where, I couch Tupac as an artist, is he made human music. You know what I mean? He made human music. It was from his gut. It was from one minute, you know what I mean? For the people who are like, oh, he a hypocrite. Well, what person isn't a hypocrite in some form or fashion of their life? I don't understand that. To me, that just seems like more people trying to detract from the impact that he had, because he was truthful in the fact that he said, yo, I'm not innocent in all this. I didn't call black women the B word, and I didn't did this and that, but that was my influence of being on alcohol. But at the same time, dude was 23, 24.
Yeah.
Like, he's my age, having this much, not only knowledge, but it's the duality in Pac to go from a Hail Mary to then like the skit that bridges it, like, we on this conglomerate called Death Row. You know what I mean? I love that skit, actually, like the outro to Hail Mary. And then you get, Toss It Up, which is more so a bombastic track. And I like that he's only Tupac would on a song talk about a girl that he want to, get it in the parking lot, and then just two other dudes on the last verse. It's just insane. Like, I love it, man.
Hey, man, that speaks to who he was, man. He was a complex person, and I think most of his fans, I think we understood that. I don't think we knew that. Yeah, it just kind of depends sometimes which way the wind was blowing, what Tupac you were going to get, but you could be critical and say, yeah, he's a hypocrite. But I mean, at that point, he was, again, not making excuses for him, but he was trying to find himself. I think the interesting thing about Toss It Up is that there was talk during the beef, if you will, that, oh yeah, Pac, he ain't got no radio songs like Bad Boy. And this was a radio song. Like, so this was his response to the haters. It never came out from Bad Boy, but it was just, again, we didn't have Twitter, so it was just rumors and innuendo that Pac couldn't do a radio joint, and this was a radio joint with some bad singers. I mean, Danny Boy, Aaron Hall, and KC and JoJo. All these you got 4 singers on one track. Like, you don't. He just really needed Aaron Hall. That's it. he didn't have to have these other dudes. But that's how I look at Toss It Up. I look at it as his response to, because at that particular time, Big and Puff and Bad Boy, they had the charts. Don't get it twisted. They had charts. They had hit records that got radio play. And Pac was showing that he could do the same thing. Then we moved to another radio track, but really wasn't too. I can't really say it was a radio, but it was radio friendly. To Live and Die in L.A. One of my favorites on this album. What did you think about this one?
To Live and Die in L.A. To me, the Machiavelli album, I keep trying to do overview and then go into the song. But when you get to this joint, if Pac understood that he was on borrowed time because of not only his politics, but his strategy with the All Eyes on Me album, QD3 has an interview where he says, Pac was, on the All Eyes on Me album, he was trying to show that he was relatable to basically Black youth and Black men, Black women, in the community that was more in the urban center, and had like not little respect for the old 60s, 70s old heads who were still preaching, Black power and whatnot, right? But QD3 talks about how when they were having conversations on this album, he was like, yo, I want to be able to teach the youth something. I want to be able to use my voice on this album to actually bring together some type of political consciousness in the people that I garnered on All Eyes on Me, because you already had their attention now. Tupac puts out a movie, Gridlock, everybody wants to go see it. He puts out a movie, gang related, everybody wants to go see it.
Right.
So you already have people's attention on multiple fronts. So when you get to a joint like To Live and Die in L.A., if I'm to understand that he knew he had borrowed time, this is like his love letter to how L.A. took him in, and he's just like, yo, if I don't make it, y'all know I love y'all because y'all showed me so much love. Like, and even in the video with him with the orange, being like the orange guy and going down to Crenshaw High and all that stuff, man, it's such a beautiful love letter. And just the strings are so sentimental to me, where the like the Prince sample and the hook with the Live and Die, it's still classic to this day.
Yeah, man, that song is funny because like he died in September of '96. I went to LA right after graduation in December of '96 for Christmas. My girl, now my wife, she's from LA. And man, when I got out there, I turned on the radio. As soon as I landed, we were in the car, turned the radio on, man. That's all that was playing. And I mean, like, I just, and that song makes you love LA, makes you want to go to LA. LA is a beautiful city. One of my favorites. And that song just, it, and then when the video came out, man, we were just like, we were so happy to see the video, but we were sad because he was gone. You know what I mean? Like, it was just like, I don't, and it was something you touched on, Q. I don't necessarily subscribe to the fact that I think, that he was speaking his death into existence. I don't necessarily, because that's not all what Tupac rapped about. He rapped about hard times, and maybe he did know. We'll never know. But I think he also spoke so much about positivity and about life and about having fun and having a good time that I don't necessarily, it's almost like reading a book. You're reading a 100-page book and you take out 2 pages and you just focus on those 2 pages, but you got 98 other pages. So, I mean, yeah, he did speak about those things, but I think, like you said, this is his love letter to LA. And I think it's a dope song, man. And it still jams and it still gets mad play no matter where you go. Track 5, Blasphemy. This was one Q, man. It came on. And
God has a plan.
I just started rapping it, and I without even looking, I forgot the name was Blasphemy, and I was like, this is my shit. I just remember riding on campus, man, listening, bumping this joint. But what you think about Blasphemy?
God has a plan. Like, you know what I mean? Like that intro, we could actually say Machiavelli could be like there's horrorcore elements to this album. Like Hail Mary and Blasphemy, those would be considered, if they were produced by the RZA, everybody would say, oh, those are grave they think it's trash. You know what I mean? Like, yo, you know what I'm saying? So it's and also quick note on Hail Mary. Tupac's godfather, Geronimo Pratt, who's a Black Panther. He has an interview where he says Tupac came to visit him in San Quentin. And he told him, and Pac was like, yo, tell me about the Black Panther, how y'all patrol the police in Oakland and blah, blah, in LA and whatnot, right? And he told him, well, we had this policy where if you were on patrol and you had a firearm with you, you had to be prepared to use it. And the policy was called Ride or Die.
Wow.
So when people really listen to this album, please understand there's so much, I think I call them Pantherisms. But there's so many little Pantherisms in this album, like, do you want to ride or die? Like that, like, and it's funny because Geronimo, when he heard it, he was like, I just smiled because I know that he's talking to me in this this verse. So when I hear Blasphemy, I got advice from my father. All he told me was this, nigga, get off your ass if you plan to be rich. Oh my goodness. But that skit leading into just some of the greatest verses, like, I think his metaphors I think it's a metaphor for the rap game personally. Because, you know, bridging Hail Mary with Blasphemy, I think that they are sibling songs where he's like, follow me. You know what I mean? I think that he's trying to lead rap to a different way. And at this time, he's recording an album with East Coast, Midwest, and West Coast rappers called One Nation. So you even hear that on Against Our Lives, like One Thug, One Nation. You know what I mean? I really do believe that Blasphemy is a metaphor for what he's trying to do in rap, where he's like, we need to get all of this, you know, gang banging and killing. He even says this in the interview, all this gang banging and killing and quote unquote running trains on Black women. We need to get all this shit out of hip hop. We need to get all this shit out of our communities, and we need to bring that together and bring a new type of unity. And Blasphemy, to me, when he's talking about I'm coming for the Pharaoh's kids, bruh. Analogies for Puff, you know what I mean? Come on now.
And Blasphemy, you know, double meaning, you know, blasphemy as in the biblical sense, or blast for me, you know, like it's, man, listen, this, and this is what I talk about a lot of times on this podcast, where when music is really good, and you don't even have to talk about whether or not it's classic or not, but when music is really good, you're able to get something from it each time that you listen to it. Maybe something, you know, it maybe one day it might be a snare, the next day it might be a verse that you never really paid attention to. Oh man, okay, I know what he's talking about. You know, because sometimes we consume this music much like you did, probably when you were a lot younger. So some of the references and stuff might have gone over your head. Maybe some of the historical aspects might have flown over your head. And then as you get older, you realize what it is that they're talking about. And I think this, you know, Pac was definitely headed in a different direction. And this song right here was one of those other songs that really gave me that feel of Tupacalypse Now. Because that was the first time I heard him. I want to say Tupacalypse Now. I was a freshman in college, I think. I was either a freshman or I was a senior in high school, one of the two. But blew me away, you know, because that didn't sound like the dude on, you know, same song with Humpty Hump and them. So so yeah, that was a dope track. Then you get into track 6, Life of an Outlaw, featuring the Outlaws. What you got on this one, man? This is
the magnum opus of the album. Yeah. Those strings, like it's like an Italian opera, where you just hear like it's just some dirty, hairy Western Clint Eastwood, like I explain the game. Niggas ain't listening, stuck in positions. Like, bruh, this Blasphemy, Hail Mary, all of these songs for me, it makes me upset when people say Tupac isn't a lyricist. Because I think that we might have different definitions of what a lyricist is. But if we're just going by a general definition of what it means to be a lyricist, it means you're able to convey ideas using different devices, whether it be metaphor, simile, and sometimes you can say things plainly that was not always, apparent to the naked eye or apparent to people. And that's what, to me, makes Tupac a lyricist. Now, is he, Pharoah Monch? No, come on, no.
But he's no threat to Rakim.
Yeah, like he's not Jay Electronica. Like, you know what I mean? He don't gotta be that. But to me, he doesn't have to be that to qualify as a lyricist. When you have songs like Blasphemy and Life of an Outlaw, where he's like Code 3, attack formation, pull out your pistol, keep an eye out for them devils because they itching to get you. Like, bruh.
Lessons.
Listen, bro. Like, he's not just talking some this is cool. He is talking about the police. Like, he is talking about them people. So it's like, man, this song is the glue to this album for me. And even the Outlaws all got off on this song. I'm like, yo, even Napoleon like went crazy on this last verse. I was like, all right. But the production, bro, the hook, man, like Napoleon's verse, where he's like, yo, would you kill for me? Like, bro, it just gives such a like, his battery's fully charged on this song. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I'm with you, man. I'm one of the few people, man. I bought the Thug Life album, so I was familiar with the Outlaws. Those dudes, now on some of the songs, they were hit or miss, but I think that they delivered, on this album. They delivered for him. They didn't oversimplify anything. They didn't try to be anything that they weren't. And they held their own, when rhyming with Tupac. But I agree with you. I think this particular song puts it all together. And, you're right. I've often said, like, no, he's not a lyricist, because I think when I get into the debate about people about him being a lyricist, people want to bring up, the radio songs. He's not lyrical on the radio songs. On these songs like this right here, he's got, it's lessons. It's things that he's talking about that are still relevant to this day, 25 years later. And man, I love this joint. And then we get into track 7 we mentioned a little earlier, Just Like Daddy featuring Outlaws. Like I said, this was okay. It's my least favorite song. I think if they had used the hook, I think really kind of what took me out. I was like, hook's okay. But it's not like you. It's not something I'll skip. It's just not it's my least favorite song, but it's not a song that I'll skip.
Absolutely. I think it's, people who were teenagers or 20 in the 90s, they have a lot of sentimental value for this song for some reason. Whenever I ask, and I don't like to call people old heads because I'm getting old now, but it's like, you know what I'm saying? So it's like, you know what I mean? I ask the OGs and old heads, like, yo, like, how you feel about this album, or more so this song? And they'll be like, man, I had my first time to this joint. I you know what I mean? I love that song. My mama was away on vacation. My girl came over, you know what I mean? We got it popping. I'm like, all right, word. Other dudes, high school dance, man. This came on and blah, blah, blah. My prom song. I'm like, word. So it's like, for reasons like that, I like to put myself in those shoes where it's like, if I was that young cat, like 18, 17, and I heard I'm like, yeah, I'm trying to be daddy, you know what I mean? Somewhere, you know what I mean? So it's like, I like it. It's a good song.
Yeah, and then we get the track 8, Crazy, featuring Badass. Q, I'm gonna let you in a little secret. When I as I mentioned earlier, I was listening without looking at the track listing. When this song came on, all you heard was, yo! Because I hadn't heard it in so long. I was like, this was my shit. This might be my favorite. I can't really tell you why. This might be my favorite track on the album. I love this song. I used to play it all the time, man. This is my joint. I mean, man, I can't even, I don't know why, but I kept coming back to this song. I don't, even to this day, I don't really know why, but this song probably, if it's not my favorite track on the album, it got played the most. Because I think, by that time I was buying CDs. So I had this actual CD. If I had the tape, maybe I might not have played it as much. because you had to actually rewind it. But yeah,
Mhm.
man, this is my what'd you think about Crazy? This is my joint right here. I love it.
It's an amazing song, multiple levels. First of all, to corroborate exactly why I believe, and not believe, but we can verify that Tupac was orchestrating gang truces on this very song. He says, "I see Bloods and Crips running up the hill, looking for a better way." Like, you know what I'm saying? My brothers and sisters, it's time to build. Cause even thug niggas pray. Like, he's letting y'all know what I've been doing and what they might kill me for. And I think that it's incredible that we get that. Number two, we have the quietest feature verse from Badass I've ever heard. Like, this is the most, like, you know, the Yin Yang Twins would be blushed from this, but Badass had a good verse. I think the hook is incredible, and just the
Mhm.
guitar riff and the time goes by,
Mhm.
puffing on live.
Mhm.
Does the production give you Outcast?
It gives you
I
that
always
live
heard Big
instrumentation.
Boy.
It gives you the live instrumentation feel of Outkast.
Mm-hmm,
And that was different because, from what I know, or at least from
mm-hmm,
what I can remember, I don't remember Pac ever, working with live instruments or anything
mm-hmm,
like that on
mm-hmm,
in songs.
mm-hmm,
Um, but yeah, it's man,
mm-hmm,
this when I heard
mm-hmm,
it, man, a couple of weeks ago, like I said, listening to it, and again, because I hadn't listened to this album in its entirety, I'll put it
mm-hmm,
on shuffle and I'll hear a song or two here or there, but I
mm-hmm,
literally had not heard the song in like 3 years.
mm-hmm,
I
mm-hmm,
was just like, yo, that's my shit. Like,
mm-hmm,
man, whoo,
mm-hmm.
good memories, man, good
Yeah.
memories.
I mean, to close on your Outcast point, I believe Pac was supposed to have them on the One Nation album, because
Wow.
what people don't know is Pac was going to go to Atlanta with
Mm-hmm.
Kadada Jones before Vegas. But I believe that in the book and multiple interviews with his family that corroborated this information, he was court ordered to do a club appearance at 66 Deuce, which was the club that Death Row owned in
Right,
Vegas
in
and
Vegas,
whatnot.
right.
So it just adds a lot of just credence to, people who are like, man, Vegas could have been some type of whatever operation set up. He was never supposed to leave.
Mm-hmm.
But the fact that Outkast would have been on it, just imagine those voices, Andre and, like, bro, we couldn't handle that. Like, bro,
Nah,
what?
that would have
Incredible
been
song.
crazy. That'd have been crazy. And he would come here from time to time too.
Mm-hmm.
Um, then we get into track 9, White Man's World.
Whew.
So many
Listen,
lessons on this one, man.
listen. It's incredible. Who knows what tomorrow brings? Like, man, it's so sentimental. This is that keep your head up, Pac.
Mm-hmm.
This is that,
Mm-hmm.
you know what I mean? And this is why I think this album is such a amalgamation of all of his best qualities.
Right.
Because when you get a joint like White Man's World, he's like, you come in, I think it's either a Farrakhan speech in the beginning or the end, actually. But who made you ashamed of being black? And he's just like, dear sister, up in prison, I miss you. Like, we're crying, writing messages. So, like, come on, man. Like, talking about help me raise my black nation, reparations are due. It's true. Caught up in his fame, I took advantage of you. Like, bro, he's letting y'all know. He's
Bars.
letting us know, man. It's bars, man. And it's like, and that's what makes him so dangerous, is
Yeah.
because you can't have a guy who sold 6 million records in like 9 months on All Eyes on Me go turn around and not make those type of songs anymore. Now he's talking about reparations. You
Mm-hmm.
know what I mean? Talking about free Mumia, free,
Yep. Free
all, come
Geronimo
on, man.
Pratt. Yeah.
Come on, man. Like, dude, like, y'all know how I feel. But White Man's World is incredible.
Yeah. And a song like this is to me what was missing from All Eyes on Me, if there was anything missing. I mean, like you said, All Eyes on Me was like the nonstop party record. This was a lesson. This was, keep your head up. This was Dear Mama. This was, you know, Tupac being very sentimental, but being very direct as well.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I mean, incredible track. This is one of the highlights, I think, on the album. Then we get to track 10. Track 10, Me and My Girlfriend. What I will say about this track,
Mm-hmm.
I listening to it, I kind of wish that they didn't let Jay-Z remake this track.
Listen.
Because it doesn't fit.
Mm-hmm.
And this track fits perfectly on this album.
Mhm.
But what Jay-Z did to it, and I kind of understand and get why he did what he did, but they probably shouldn't have let him do it. And I know, he got the blessings from Afeni Shakur, rest in peace. But I don't know. I mean, because this shit is hard. I mean, man.
Like, dog, there are people who still think he's talking about a woman. Like, you know what I mean? Like, there are people who still think he's talking about a girl.
It's the duel.
And it's like, it's just the duality, like you're saying. For me and my girlfriend, number one, let me give y'all some other Pantherisms on this. There's a book by Mumia Abu-Jamal with the foreword from Afeni Shakur called Lost in the Whirlwind.
Okay.
And if you listen to Look for Me, Lost in the Whirlwind, 96, Bonnie and Clyde, me and I'm doing 85 when we ride. Like, dude, to juxtapose this in the same year with I Gave You Power is always dope to me, because it's like you see how Nas and Pac had similar understandings of lyrics and metaphor, and just the Spanish guitar on this, just the 808 that's hidden in the background. Like, dude, like even who is it, Storm on the beginning when she's die, nigga, die, blah, 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 and then, you know what I mean? Like, I love that. You know what I mean? It's incredible.
Solid.
Exactly.
Yeah, I love this joint, man. Like I said, looking back on it now, I get why, they allowed Jay-Z to do it. And, he's got Beyonce. And I think he and Beyonce, I think at the time I don't know if they had just started dating, but they made it public that they were a couple. So, that part of it, I understand. But if you listen to this song and then you listen to Jay-Z's song, you realize like Jay-Z really shouldn't have done it, because like he's not making the song better, because it's hard to top this. And I really had forgotten how dope this song was. And going back and listening to it again, I was like, I was sitting and thinking, and it didn't bother me until, like I said, about a couple of weeks. I was like, you know what? They shouldn't have. I was like, fuck, they give Jay-Z this one for. They shouldn't have let Jay-Z touch this. It's like, it's not, it's and it's not a bad song. I don't think Jay-Z messed it up, but I don't think he should have touched it.
Yeah.
But dope song as he's coming to the end of the album. We get to track 11, Hold Your Head. Bruh, what you got on this one, man?
Once again, man, it's just to me, the last 5 songs on this album are just like, it's like the last will and testament of Tupac Shakur is this song, where he's just like, Mumia, Mutulu, Geronimo, Sekou. He's talking about Sekou Odinga, Mutulu Shakur, Mumia Abu-Jamal. This is the biggest rapper in the world. Now, juxtapose this to what we have today, and what they talk about in their skits or their intros. Or people don't do skits anymore, but what they do, everything is, luxury cars, luxury clothes, foreign women. Everything is about trying to make you feel bad because you don't have a product that they're selling you right. But when you hear songs like Hold Your Head, it actually has made me cry on multiple occasions. I'm not afraid to say that. I'm not ashamed to say that, because as a young black man in America, as a black person in this world, I think sometimes just having an older brother or having a strong figure saying, yo, it's okay, hold your head. I go through the same shit. Like, I go through this, but you got to hold your head. It's going to be all right. So for us to have a rap star, the biggest one, telling us, yo, there's purpose to this, there's political purpose, there's a personal purpose to this, but there's a sentimental value in this song that is just so deep, because you come in with the jail bars closing, because Tupac was put in jail.
Right.
You know what I mean? If you think about this, people, if you go through history, all of the greatest black leaders or black revolutionaries, whatever you want to call them, they've all been put in the carceral system. All of them. Martin Luther King was put in jail. There's a letter from Birmingham jail. Malcolm X was in jail, found Islam, found Elijah Muhammad. All the greatest, who really made, like, almost prophetic impact. They were all put in jail. So for him to start with the bars closing and shouting out his elders and people who gave him his politics, and then just, ending the song, one of the most haunting courses.
Yes.
How do you keep the music? Like, bro, it just seems like his soul is in this song. You know what I mean?
Man, this song right here, I distinctly remember listening to it for the first time when I heard it. um, it made me sad because I was like, at that particular time, I was like, I got it. I see where he was trying to go.
Mm-hmm.
And because at that point it hit me, it registered with me like, no, this ain't all eyes on me. Like this is something different. And there's so many lessons and jewels in this. And now he's gone and we can't get this anymore. And the reality is that rap was it took me back to when we were learning stuff, when rap gave you lessons, basically, when they taught you about history, taught you about your people, when you're shouting out, Free Mumia, it makes me as a 22-year-old kid at the time, I think, go and find out more about Mumia because I didn't know. You know what I'm saying? And I'm on a black college campus. I heard the name before, but I didn't know. But it made me want to go and find out more. Wherein, if it was 2021, I could, get on the internet or whatever the case may be. But I think that just hearing those kind of the lessons and things that he was preaching in that particular song, I felt better after hearing it. But like I remember the first time I heard, man, I was sad. I was like, damn, this was where he was going. Like he was trying to take us there, and this is where he was headed. Because again, there was a sense of direction at this particular time in that album that we didn't see a direction in All Eyes on Me. He had direction on Strictly. He had direction on Tupac. He had direction on Me Against the World. All Eyes on Me was what it was. It was a double album. It was a party album. It was a lot of different things. It was a jamming album, but it wasn't what this is right here. And I'm like, we're coming to the end of the album, and I'm like, it just hit me like, yo, this is where he was going, and I felt sad because we weren't going to get any more of this. And the reality was, Q, after hearing that song, I took a look at the landscape of what hip hop was, and it wasn't nobody else going to be doing that. Nobody. I mean, because rap was it was money had come involved, basically.
Yep. Corporations.
So hip hop was corporate at that point.
And this is why I believe Tupac Shakur, he transcends people's GOAT conversation to me personally, because there's so many accounts from his family members. You can look up YouTube, you can go in the book. There was strategy, like I was saying, with All Eyes on Me. There was strategy. It wasn't just, a young kid who was trying to put on, a fake image. He was actually putting on a persona that he knew was going to attract that demographic, like I say. So you're 100% correct in the fact that he was saying, all right, now that I've catalyzed this audience who's like, oh, we love everything you do. All right, if you love everything I do y'all know who Mumia Abu-Jamal is? Because this is real. You know what I mean? On Hold Your Head, he's like, currency means nothing if we still ain't free.
We still ain't free.
Bruh,
and we
come
still
on,
ain't
man.
free.
Come on, man. Like, we can't even get NBA players to sit out for 2 games.
Man, Q, I had a discussion. I can't remember if it was on this podcast or someone else's podcast. And I said, I would have liked to have seen, the 40-year-old Tupac or the 50-year-old Tupac. He would be political. He would be, and not necessarily supporting a party or anything. Because I think Pac was more of a kind of cat that was, he want to make you think, don't necessarily follow the crowd. You ain't necessarily got to follow me. Think about what it is that I'm telling you, because what I'm speaking, I want you to grasp and take hold of. And we don't have that, not in that manner. There's, it takes me back to the skit that, well, not the skit, but the piece that Kendrick put on to Pimp a Butterfly when he said, you ain't got no loudmouth 30-year-olds walking around.
Come on,
and that's
man.
true. I was like, wow, man, this is crazy.
And it's so deep, Kyle, because
it is.
It's just so deep to me because people don't understand. Even if you know who Sanyika Shakur is, Sanyika wrote a great book, Monster Cody. If you know the book Monster, he wrote another book talking about the adventures of an LA gangbanger, and he was actually an 8-tray gangster crip in Los Angeles, and he was a part of an organization that Mutulu Shakur founded. I think it was the New African People's Organization, and while in jail, he got politicized reading Mutulu Shakur, and he reached out to Pac, and Pac started writing him. People also don't know that Tupac actually wrote letters and had correspondence with
Yes.
Huey Newton while he was in jail. People
Yes.
don't know this. So he's getting lessons, and he's talking to Mutulu, he's talking to Sanyika, and Sanyika and him actually have a conversation on YouTube. It's actually a recorded phone call that you can listen to. It's like 38 minutes long. And Tupac says, I have plans where I want to get a bunch of rappers. We're going to start kids leagues. We're going to put the fathers back in coaching positions. We're going to, you know, find a way to get a van, and we're going to go around to the drug dealers, and we're going to be like, look, homie, I can't tell you this out dealing drugs, but I can pay you to get off the block from this time to this time. And let's just see what happens to the neighborhood. There is nobody.
Yeah.
There is no, and this is in 95, by the way. It's like in December,
That's
the conversation. Crazy. There is nobody who even has the desire to do that type of work in our communities. And I think that Hold Your Head is just the essence of that type of spirit, man.
It really is. And I mean, like, it goes back to when I think about, you know, some of the things that he was talking about, particularly on this album. It goes back to something we used to hear all the time coming up. Like when people say, man, you ahead of your time. He was literally ahead of his time. And, you know, I know people fantasize and they become larger than life in death, but he was large. He was large long before he passed, you know, and he was definitely a star. Then we get to the last track, and this album flows pretty quickly. It doesn't feel long at all. The last track, Against All Odds, this man said, it's the realest shit I ever wrote.
But you and I know what's going on. Like, what?
Who didn't get it on this? Who didn't get it on this song?
This little nickname Nas, think he lied. Like, man, listen. I think that this is one of the greatest diss songs ever, personally, just because the desperation you feel. It's like back against the wall. Yeah. I got 2 bullets in the clip. Who wants it? Right. You know what I mean? Like, I ain't got no more options. I have no way out, and this is it. And just the wartime skit that comes in, you know what I mean? And even on the OG version, if y'all type it in, by the way, I started to tell y'all about that, but type in on YouTube, the Platinum Edition Machiavelli. You can hear the entire OG album with outtakes. There's no skits on the album at all on this one. It's all just Tupac's raw emotion. It's so dope. But when he comes in, this be the realest shit I ever wrote, and just like the keys in the production. I like the bass line. That bass line is so cool. Oh my goodness, like, bro. And then he just don't stop. Like, he just don't stop, man. Everyone gets it on this one. As a closer, I think it's the best outro Pac made. Because it's just so memorable, and I think that even Nas has to take it as like almost like a Purple Heart, where it's like, yo, I went to war with Pac, and I came out of this 90s stuff alive. You know what I mean? Like, I keep saying it's an amazing track, but it's just a devastating song to listen to, because you were like, man, he really was against all odds, and sometimes you crap out. You know what I mean? But it was an incredible song.
Man, I didn't know who Haitian Jack was.
No one knew.
I'd heard stories about Jimmy Henchman. There was rumors that, you know, he had something to do with Quad City. There was rumors that Haitian Jack, like, we just didn't. Again, 96, we didn't know. We just if somebody said it in the magazine, honestly, we probably believed it. You know, or if it was word on the street, it just depends on how much you related to whoever told you, you know. But yeah, man, this joint right here, man, just the bass line, his bars. And you make a good point. He really literally felt like he was backed into a corner. Like, I don't even know that he necessarily wanted, because he really could have ended the album on Hold Your Head, if we're being honest. But you know, vintage Tupac, he gotta get one last thing before he's got to get the last word in. And I wasn't mad. And I remember hearing Nas talk about it in an interview. Nas said, you know, when he heard it, he said he was shocked. He said, but he wasn't mad. He was just like, this dude really is passionate about what it is he's talking about. And he went on to explain that, you know, that they had to be, he said at the time he didn't know how it still got on the album. He's like, but he said, no, we were cool when he passed. He was like, we squashed everything. And then Eric B corroborated the story, because Eric B was with him, was with Tupac in New York. But yeah, he and that's the thing. Like, it seemed to me like it would be cool that the fact that he dissed Nas, and then they got a chance to squash it, but he dissed Jay-Z, and they didn't squash it, and then Jay-Z uses his song. I'm like,
Puffy
on,
getting
man.
robbed, like, come on, man, like, dude.
Mobb Deep. I mean,
Mobb Deep, wonder why nigga blowed him out. Like, what?
He had already addressed Biggie on Hit 'Em Up. And I mean, bro, again, even let's say Pac doesn't die. We never, there's in no universe you could have told me that he would be killed. Then he would die. You might, if you say, well, Kyle, Pac's gonna get shot in 3 months. Okay, I could believe that.
Right.
But even then, because he never struck me as a troublemaker. He was somebody who, could get into trouble. Right. But it wasn't, he didn't seem like, Pac never came off to me like somebody who was looking to go start something. Even if you watch the video of the fight, and I've only seen it a couple of times because I just can't really bring myself to watching it. But if you watch the fight of what happened in Vegas, Pac wasn't the agitator. I mean, like, come on, he rolled up, but he wasn't like, let's jump on this fool or anything like that. It was just.
And how do we have all of this footage on tape, but we only get the 30 seconds that he, like, come on, man, like, come on, man.
His history is an amazing thing, man. When you can shape history the way that you want to shape it to make it look the way that you want to make it look, if you know what I mean. But yeah, man, that joint, Against All Odds, man, perfect way to close out. Like I said, I looked at it as Pac, having the last word, and that closes out the album. Again, man, looking back on it, it's crazy to think that this album is turning 25 years old, because I just remember it so vividly. One question I have for you before we get out of here, if you were going to rank Tupac's albums, the ones that he made when he was alive, including this one, how would you rank them?
Top 3?
Okay. Yeah, give me your top 3.
Okay, top 3. This is my favorite Tupac album.
Okay. Wow.
This is my favorite. Me Against the World second, but it's like a close second. It's like your two babies, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then All Eyes on Me is like, to me, it's just, it's grade A party music, man.
Yeah.
Like, people don't like the second disc. I love Run the Streets.
I don't.
I love Run the Streets.
You said something about that in our group chat. Was a couple weeks, and I started. I was like, no, I'll say that for the podcast.
Yeah.
I'll put it like this, Q. If, and I've said this and I've maintained this, and I still feel like this, Q. If they made All Eyes on Me one disc, it had the potential of being a top 5 album. It was just that bad. I mean, like, it was but I just think some of those, like the joint with the 7779311 sample, I think it's What's Your Phone Number.
I hate that song.
When do I call you bitch? I could have done without that. Yeah. It was another. It's like
When We Ride is okay.
It's okay. Like, I just, if now some of those tracks I'll skip, but in fairness, I say the same thing about Life After Death. Because Pac and Big are constantly compared. I say the same. Like, there's some tracks on Life After Death, but
R. Kelly joint.
Yeah, he could have kept that. Nasty Boy. It's terrible.
What is that?
But I think he had to. I get why they did a double album,
of course.
But yeah, if I had to rank them, man, I'm going Me Against the World, this album, and then probably All Eyes on Me. Yeah, that'd probably be my top 3.
Is this? If we're talking about 3 album runs and just careers in hip hop, this got to be top 5 to me, man. Like, if we're talking about just the primal nature of, like, these albums and just how much they are like epochs in just his and not just like his life, but just the rap history. I think that Me Against the World marks like a transition where he's like, yo, they really out to get me. They really don't want me to win here. Like, I mean, they putting me up on cases, blah, blah, blah. So I'm going to give y'all my real. I'm going to give y'all my whole soul, because I don't know if I'm getting out of jail anytime soon.
Right.
Then we get All Eyes on Me, where it's like, okay, it's Cristal, you know what I mean? Yo, it's thug, like we out, I'm out. Thank God I'm out. I done did 2 years. I ain't had no women. I'm about to be showing y'all what it's about, you know what I mean? And then you get just Machiavelli, where it's like, all right, that worked. I got all these people, 6 million records sold. I'm the #1 rapper in the world. I'm walking on Versace stages. Now let's pivot the people to a political consciousness and still giving y'all some jams too. Cause I know y'all wanted that. You know what I mean?
Right.
3 album runs, man. This got to be at least top 10 for people. Like this is some of the greatest like run in hip hop.
I think the thing that kind of supports what you're saying, I'd have to look and see who, because I've done some podcasts on three-peats, but when I do the three-peats, I'm talking strictly about their first 3 albums. And these obviously weren't his first 3 albums, but I think the thing that you can make a case for in what you're saying is that who Tupac was and the things that surrounded him around each of those albums, when you factor those things into it, you make a strong case, because who he was for that Me Against the World album and who he was with All Eyes on Me, he's literally 2 different people. He's literally, and then he was somebody else, somebody who is a little bit more matured, a little bit more refined, a little bit more focused as to where he was going and what he wanted his vision to be and his vision for his people on the Machiavelli album. So yeah, I'm not necessarily disagreeing with you. I think if you can factor those things into that equation, what you just mentioned, because he was, I mean, like, even if you listen to Me Against the World, and because Me Against the World was done, if I'm not mistaken, right before he went to jail. That album, coupled with that Vibe magazine interview that he did where he's on the cover and he's got the glasses on, some of the most deep and retrospective things that Pac has talked about. But for some, not all, but for some, you mentioned earlier, it was an East Coast album, or at least it sounded East Coast. He kind of went back to his roots. But Pac grew up in Baltimore. He lived in New York for a while. He lived in Oakland. Pac was, let's just be real, Pac was everybody's.
He was a global dude, man.
He was everybody's, man. So but yeah, those 3 albums are incredible albums. And I think history will show that. And you go back and listen to these albums, and I never get tired of talking about them. But again, I'd be honest, it's still a little sad, man, because I was there for it, and it's like, if I knew then what I know now, maybe I feel a little different. But even in some of the things that we've discussed here, and some of the things that I've researched and stuff on my own, still a little sad, because we want him here for selfish reasons, but I mean, I guess it was his time. But this, I always say this: when somebody passes away, particularly an artist like this, you bring them back to life every time you press play. So
come on,
that's what we're doing. That's what we're doing every time we listen to it. Man, before we get out of here, Q, man, tell folks where they can find you, where they can hit you up at.
For sure.
This, I promise you, my brother, this will not be the last time I have you on the podcast. We waited too long. We definitely got to do this again, man. Whether or not we're talking about music, we're talking about life, or we're talking about whatever.
Absolutely. Nah, first of all, you can catch me mostly every Tuesday on Dead End Sports. We do a live show discussing all of the newest sports news in affiliation with Dead End Hip Hop. And then, if you also want to learn some history and whatnot, I actually have an Instagram page that actually has some Tupac information on there. It's my page. You can follow it. It's Finite Resource, but it's FINITE .resource RESOURCE. So tap in with me. I'll answer DMs if y'all got questions or whatnot. I do a little research on the side and whatnot. I read a couple books from here and there. So, what I mean? Hopefully people can hear that in the way I speak. But, what I mean? Tap in with me, and it's always going to be love when we tap in, Kyle,
No doubt. My man. Hey, well, you guys have been listening. You already know where to find me. The 12 Kyle podcast on all platforms is free. The podcast drops every Thursday at midnight. From time to time this year, we'll be dropping bonus episodes on Sundays at midnight. So make sure that you tune in. Make sure that you subscribe, because that's the way that you'll get to it. And you can follow me on all the socials, 12 Kyle across the board. That's going to do it for me and Q, man. Once again, 25 years later, the Don Killuminati, the 7-day theory with my man Q. So for my boy Q, I'm your boy 12. We'll catch you guys next time. 5 G's.
Peace.
If you work in university maintenance, Granger considers you an MVP because your playbook ensures your arena is always ready for tip-off. And Granger is your trusted partner, offering the products you need all in one place, from HVAC and plumbing supplies to lighting and more, and all delivered with plenty of time left on the clock, so your team always gets the win. Call 1-800-GRANGER, visit Granger.com, or just stop by. Granger, for the ones who get it done. If you work in university maintenance, Granger considers you an MVP because your playbook ensures your arena is always ready for tip-off. And Granger is your trusted partner, offering the products you need all in one place, from HVAC and plumbing supplies to lighting and more, and all delivered with plenty of time left on the clock, so your team always gets the win. Call 1-800-GRANGER, visit Granger.com, or just stop by. Granger, for the ones who get it done.